You know, man, 9 times out of 10, when you give people a reason to look for something, they are going to find it. For example, the Coldplay concert with that dumbass couple with the billionaire tech exec, right? If he had just held onto her tight like a real G, and if he had just waved at the camera, I bet you a lot of people wouldn't have even realized he was having an affair with his wife, right? When you give people a reason to look for something by, in his case, acting all crazy and ducking down, people are going to find that shit. And that's what happened with Pirate Software. Okay, now that's the whole guy. I dropped a video yesterday talking about how he does not support Stop Killing Games, the initiative. Basically, forcing companies to have an end of life cycle for a game that they created and sold to a customer so that the customer can continue to play it when they no longer want to support it, right? Seems pretty simple. Pirate Software, just giving you the cliff notes, came through and said it was a dumb idea on a coder's perspective, on a man who worked at Blizzard for 10 years. My perspective is that's stupid. Wipe my entire ass. You know, just a complete idiot. He didn't even understand the initiative, right? As time goes forward, hold on. As time goes forward, actual coders get wind that Pirate Software has a game. Now, to those of you who don't know, Pirate Software, the person behind the channel, also has a game. He codes. He has 20 years of coding at Blizzard or some stupid shit like that, right? So basically, coders decide to go and check out his game that's been in development for 8 years now or something. And boy, oh boy, I'm just going to play a clip of this guy named Coding Jesus. Now, before we play the clip, I do have I'm talking a minuscule amount of C++ knowledge. I took it in like junior college when I was planning to go to college, right? It's difficult. It's not for me. It is difficult. And maybe to some of you it's not, but for me it's difficult as hell. So when you have this guy, Pirate Software, propping up his entire career on being able to code and teach people how to code, you would expect that he actually knows a thing or two, right? I feel like this is one of the biggest fraud exposés I've seen in a while. And it's fascinating to see an empire crumble right before your eyes. And to all the other YouTubers out there, take notes, man. I am. Don't let your ego allow you to drive your entire brand into the ground. Let's play this video real quick.
As the next set of lines tell us everything we need to know about why Heartbound's code can no longer scale. What's up, guys? Coding Jesus here. Guys, I was working on my motorcycle, all peaceful, when I all of a sudden received a message on Discord. That message contained a file that included a diff between Heartbound's latest release and the release prior. Now, for my non-technical audience, what is a diff? A diff simply stands for difference. It's a comparison between the latest code and the code that existed before it. A diff usually shows additions and subtractions from the previous version to the new version. Why do I bring this up? Well, one of Jason's most cited reasons as to why Heartbound...
And pausing right there, for those who don't know, Jason or Thor or Pirate Software, it's all the same person. He'll refer to him as Jason. I usually call him Pirate Software, right? So basically, this professional coder got his hands on the almighty Pirate Software's game code. Just to do a quick review on how his code is formatted and how it's set up, because he's this big coder. Mind you, it would be different if Pirate Software was just a YouTuber who enjoyed coding and went on live streams and said, hey, this is the game I'm making. No. He presents himself as the all-seeing knowledge of C++ and coding and everything that is hacking, right? So let's continue.
Why do I bring this up? Well, one of Jason's most cited reasons as to why Heartbound has been in development for the past 10 years and has been progressing at a snail's pace is that he's bottlenecked on the dialogue.
When the primary bottleneck isn't code, it's actually writing.
It's not the framework, it's not the code, it is the writing.
The game's bottleneck isn't programming, it's writing.
In light of that claim, and the recent diff that I've been sent, I want to spend the next 5 minutes analyzing just that. Now, don't get me wrong, writing is hard. There are plenty of prolific examples out there of authors who haven't produced a new piece of work in years. But those authors aren't working on a 2D game. Neither are those same authors spending 11 hours a day editing a configuration file and playing Minecraft on stream. they are writing, and they are brainstorming. Now, if I didn't know Jason's character, the fact that he shifts goalposts, smears anyone who gives him an ounce of constructive criticism, and never takes accountability, I may have given him the benefit of the doubt here. But instead of just talking, let's actually take a look at the evidence so we can see what's really going on. Because this is a diff of production code, I won't be displaying or sharing any of it. Instead, what I've done is rename or change every method, number, file name, and variable to the point where the code contains nothing Heartbound related, but whose general structure still retains that of Heartbound's. In other words, the only thing that changed is the data. The code flow is the exact same. Let's take a look and see whether or not the writing really is the bottleneck. Starting from the top of the diff, changes are sorted by file name. Jason actually has decent naming for his files, and luckily for us, those that are dialogue related are all at the top of the diff, including lines of code produced.
So he's about to go through the code and he just breaks it down. Again, I'm not the biggest C++ person, but he gives an analogy in a certain part of Thor, Pirate Software, Jason's code that explains to us that the game is basically bricked. The game can't even progress further than the demo because what he did was make the game playable enough to make a demo, and he got a bunch of crowdfunding. Ever since he got crowdfunded, he started live streaming the development of the rest of the game. And when I started watching his stuff, because I saw him like everybody else probably started seeing him, I saw him on Shorts. And I was always wondering, what was that code in the background that he's always working on? But in the stream or the short, he'll be talking about something completely different, maybe a video game, maybe how to work a certain thing into like your keyboard for a hotkey, but he's never actually working on the code. Come to find out, he's been live streaming and developing, quote unquote, the game for the past 10 years. Kind of sounds scammy to me, bro. I ain't gonna lie, but let's continue this video real quick.
We have give or take around 381 lines of dialogue. The total diff size is 1,780 lines. The diff actually doesn't contain the full code change, so it's possible there are more lines of dialogue that are not included here. This is actually irrelevant for my point. Once again, this is irrelevant for the point I'm about to make, because the next set of lines tell us everything we need to know about why Heartbound's code can no longer scale, and why its development has crawled at a snail's pace. Let's zoom in on the third line in the change set. -13, 9, +13, 1,164. What does this mean? It means that there were previously 9 lines of code here, starting at line 13. Now there are 1,164 lines of code here, starting at line 13. In other words, 1,151 lines of code were added. Let's take a look at these obfuscated lines. As you can see, the game makes a decision based on the upcoming step. This represents the next scene. There are around 168 case statements that follow. In other words, there are 168 potential events that can take place, each with their own upcoming step and copied and pasted code. Jason has reached the point of no return. The amount of branching out paths has become so convoluted. His endless switch statements to handle diverging paths has left him at a point where even one spelling mistake can lead you down the wrong branch, and where adding scenes is a game of copy and paste. We'll touch on important decisions that could have been made, leveraged by games like Detroit Becoming Human.
So what I'm understanding is he basically went back to a certain point and crammed in all the options for his game. So moving forward past that block of code, you would have to always go back to add a new step or to add a new option, more or less. So basically going down further, and you would always have to return back to this block of code that's very messy, and you would have to figure out which action would allow for it to continue. But basically, it's messy to the point to where you can't scale the game. Again, I'm not a C++ expert. This shit is 90% gibberish to me, right? But I know enough to understand that professional coders should not be coding like that. Going back and editing a certain block of code and then going back to what you were doing at the bottom. I mean, shit, as much of a headache coding is, that sounds like you're giving yourself even more of a headache. But anyways, let the actual professional finish this.
We'll touch on important decisions that could have been made, leveraged by games like Detroit Becoming Human, that could have prevented this in just a moment. To emphasize just how much of a mess this is for the non-technical audience, imagine a ball of yarn. Before you retire that ball of yarn following your knitting session, you need to ensure that it is well put together. If you just throw the ball of yarn back into the trunk, you'll find yourself several knitting sessions later dealing with a jumbled ball of yarn, not knowing where to start or how to proceed. Jason's code is now that jumbled ball of yarn. So how do games like Detroit Becoming Human build a narrative engine on their game?
And he basically compares it to proper code and, breaks down that there's actually steps in place for knowledgeable developers that would have obviously been taken if he actually knew what he was doing. So I just wanted to cover that little piece of his video. And now I feel like Pirate Software is in the situation to where he can't come out and be like, oh, my bad. Because at first, this was a conversation of him getting a game situation wrong. He has a bad take. He won't change his mind on it. Boo-hoo. You lose some subscribers. Life goes on. But you're still kind of an asshole and it tarnishes your reputation, right? You could always come out a little bit later and be like, you know what, guys, my bad, right? But now we're entering a situation to where the onlookers, the people who kind of took a look underneath the engine, are destroying everything you built piece by piece. Honestly, this is what really fucks me up, is this guy could have just said, my bad about this, the Stop Killing Games initiative. I didn't understand it. Maybe I don't even support it, but my bad. Everybody would have dropped this. But now we're getting into a situation to where it's actually eating into his livelihood. Now you can't go in front of your stream and be like, oh, well, I'm this big knowledgeable coder. Nobody's going to believe you. And that was the exact reason people watched this guy. Now you're at the point to where if you say, I'm sorry, I was wrong about the Stop Killing Games initiative, nobody's even thinking about that anymore. Everybody just thinks that you can't code worth a damn and that you're scamming your audience actively by sitting in front of them like you're editing this code for a game that's going to come out. Now, I feel like his only option in this situation is finish the game. And I'm talking ASAP. I'm talking immediately. As soon as fucking possible. I don't care if you have to hire, because I know he makes money. I don't care if you have to hire a whole secret dev team to fix and unfuck your code. Because if this game never comes out, and if this game doesn't come out soon, the rest of his career is going into the garbage, bro. But anyways, I just wanted to cover that. I'm not going to stay on the whole Pirate Software thing too much. This really shocked me because the coder, Coding Jesus, really went in depth and showed how inadequate the code is. And it's shocking and it's racking up views. Go check his video out. I feel like that's the only way he can partially salvage his career, because at the same time, I'm talking about him, but I don't want to see another YouTuber's career go into the dirt, because that, sets bad implications for everybody else. So it's never good to see a YouTuber plummet like this, but god damn it, it's interesting. But anyways, guys, go check out the primary channel if you're interested. Stay inside, stay safe. I love y'all. I'll see you real soon. Peace.